this computer fab. So it's saying that the meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
How lovely.
I'm going to just
morning,
wait
everybody.
until I see myself on the other screen. And I see you as well, Steve, because I see both of us, which is quite bizarre sometimes, seeing you here and seeing you there. And it means I see myself 3 times, well, twice. Anyway, good morning, everyone. It is Friday, the 7th of August, 2020, and it's 10:32 in the morning. This is episode 4 of Tools for Living Your Life. Episode 4, Steve. Wow. That means we've done 3 whole episodes. You know what I was thinking yesterday? Imagine if we get to episode 50 or episode 100. Do you think we should do like a bit of a celebration thing? No?
I can sense people turning off as we speak.
Turning off by that point.
Who knows?
I think we should, like big celebration, like 50th. That's like, it's like a year, isn't it? Oh my gosh, that's like a year. 50.
Are you seriously saying you want to go through lockdown for another year?
No, I'm just saying that I think this kind of platform shouldn't just be about lockdown. No, I think we could be doing it even after lockdown. And actually after lockdown, we could even be in the same room, perhaps, doing it. So you never know. Anyway, good morning, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Jaffer here, along with the wonderful Steve. And Tony's already messaged to say hi, guys. So welcome, Tony. Hello. I'm going to see we've already got our first viewer. I can imagine Tony being with us in week 50. Bless him.
Oh, yeah.
I can imagine Tony in a few with us.
So listen, Tony, I think, because I know you're down south somewhere and it's supposed to be a lovely day, but here in Blackpool, we've got cloud. So it looks like you lot have nicked all the sunshine as per, which is clearly unfair. Anyway, there you go.
There you are. That's Steve's rant for the day.
Oh, no. I've got lots of rants.
Oh, fab. So how are you doing this morning, Steve?
Good, thank you. Yeah,
good.
I got up early and had an hour trundling around the back lanes of Blackpool on my bike. It was ace. Really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
The weather here isn't that bad at the minute. The weather seems to be nice and blue skies at the minute here. So I don't know whether it's your stuff's going to travel to us and then, yeah, don't know. But I woke up this morning and I went for a nice walk around the block and it was nice and refreshing.
Good.
Let's get straight into it. And Tony said, yes, continue after lockdown. That's it, Steve. We've been told. We need to continue after lockdown. So I'm going to hand straight over to you, Steve, for our morning energizer / whatever else it is.
Well, it's not so much an energizer this morning. I'm guessing that it's more of a meditative energizer.
Oh, fab, yeah.
I'm guessing that some people out there that are familiar with NLP will be familiar as well with the idea of logical levels. So I was just thinking about, we're on the verge of weekend, so we could do the logical levels of weekend. What do you think?
So we did do logical levels last week as well, and I really liked it. I really liked it. Yeah. We did logical levels. Yeah, we did logical levels last week as well. Yeah. And I really liked it.
A favorite, and
I really liked it. And I remember, so Max, oh, Max, you make me laugh, lovely. She said, I'm doing my usual working. You're my radio station. So if BBC Lancashire's listening in, then, there's a couple of gents here who could take over any daytime slot that you wanted. But I remember Max, just as I was saying that, I remember Max saying that she really loved logical levels last week. So yeah, let's do it.
We do logical levels of weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do, folks, if you've got space, just stand up and sit yourself. Get yourself to one end of the room or another, if you like.
Sorry, Steve. I'm just going to have to untangle my headphones just because they're a little bit.
I remember it now.
We are.
Do you know my brain is custard these days? I can remember seeing you walking across my screen very slowly.
Yes.
So anyway, we'll see how it goes. What logical levels of weekend? So, folks, if you're in a position where you've got a bit of space in front of you, what I'd like you to do is just have a think about what you're up to this weekend. So the people that you might be planning to see, and the plans you've got, really. So when you're ready and you've got yourself a bit relaxed, maybe you could take a couple of deep breaths and just hold that breath in and let it go. Noticing what you notice in the environment around you. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with environment. So when you're ready, just take a step forward into the logical level of environment. And when you think about the plans that you have for the weekend, what I'd like you to do is just notice who else might be there with you and what you might be doing and where you're going to be. And time might come into this as well. So we've got weekend last couple of days, so you might be doing different things at different times of the weekend. So maybe if you can just imagine the timeline that you might have for the weekend. And then when you're ready, take a step forward to the next level, and this is the logical level of behaviour. So taking into that all the information that you've got from the environment where you're going to be doing your weekend, notice what you're going to be doing. So the things that you're going to be doing in that environment with those people at that time. And one of the things you can do as we're going through these logical levels is just notice if there's anywhere where you just think that, oh, I could do with a bit of attention with this. And if you can make a mental note of that, when Jaffer and I have finished our little wittering session, maybe you want to revisit that and give that some attention and sort out what it was that was maybe causing you any unease or stress or discomfort. And when you've done that, take a breath and take a step. And this is a step into the logical levels of skills and competence. So this isn't about behaviour, this is what you do with your behaviour to get the results that you want. So think about a desired outcome that you might want from the weekend, something that you'd really like to have. It could be to spend some time in the garden or sunbathing, or it could just be to get a bit of relaxation. If you live in Blackburn and you're facing, or other areas of the country that are facing extra lockdown, what skills are you going to need so that you can thrive in the environment that you find yourself with the people that are there, and noticing what you might need to do. When you're ready and in your own time, take a step forward into the next level, which is the levels of beliefs and values. And at this level, what we're looking at are the things that are really important to us. Stephen Covey talks about these things as being the people's paradigms or principles. They're the kind of software that allows you to do certain things and stops you doing other things. So notice how that will affect your skills and competences and your behaviour as you live in that environment that you're going to be in for the next couple of days. Noticing also if there's any beliefs or values that might hold you back or limit you in what you're doing. And again, that might be something that you can give some attention to later. When you're ready, and in your own time, take a step forward into the next level. And this is the level of identity. And what I'd like you to do here is just do a couple of, think about a couple of identity statements that you want to make about yourself as you come to the end of possibly a long working week. And you need to put a different hat on maybe. So you stop being, I am a youth worker or a therapist or I am retired, or whatever, I want you to think of a couple of identities for yourself, or identity statements that will help you enjoy and get the most out of your weekend. And when you're ready, and in your own time, I'd like to take a step forward into the next level, which is the level of connection or spirituality. So as you're doing the things that you're going to be doing this weekend, how will you be connecting to the wider world? To the stuff that's been happening this week, perhaps in the news? Some of it good, some of it catastrophic for some people. But just being aware of that and thinking about your connection to the other folk around in the world, maybe to other NLPers, maybe it's a connection with your family, maybe it's a connection with friends that you might not have seen or contacted for a few weeks. Just savouring that sense of connection. And then when you're ready, and in your own time, just step off the end of the 6 levels. And sometimes what it's easy to do, it's nice to do now, and you might just want to turn and face the 6-step journey that you've done, and take a moment with your eyes closed, just to kind of notice if everything's okay on those 6 steps. So it's almost like when I was a kid, I had a Hornby train set, and when something was off the rails, it rattled. So if you think of those 6 steps as like 6 trucks on a little toy railway set, and just notice if any of the trucks has become slightly derailed and is rattling and demanding your attention. Because if you know what it is, then you can do something about it. And when you do something about one of the levels, it has a knock-on effect to the other 5. So this is about getting the most out of your weekend. Okie dokie. And when you're ready, and in your own time, come and have a seat again. Jeff's got a story for us.
I do, and thank you so much for that, Steve. That was really useful, and that thing that you said about making sure you've got plenty of space in front of you. Just as you said, step off your logical levels and look back, I ended up banging into my desk, and I thought, well, that's the reason why Steve said you need to have a bit of space around you. So
I thought you were going to run out of wire.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. Keeping me connected. Right, okay, so it is story time. So again, now that you've sat down, perhaps, having done your logical levels, I'll just invite you to get into a position that's just right for you, so that you can listen to this story and really enjoy the messages that it provides. And this is called We Live in a Palace of Possibilities. You might want to listen to this story with your eyes open, or you might want to close your eyes. And again, just get into a position that's really good for you, that'll allow you to really enjoy the next few minutes. So We Live in a Palace of Possibilities by Gary Craig. We live in a palace of possibilities, an ever-expanding structure filled with awesome rooms and annexes that are loaded with achievements and joy. These rooms are open to everyone, although most of us only visit a few of them. It's not that we're barred from any of the rooms. No, indeed, they are our birthright. Rather, it's that we choose to dwell only in those rooms within which we are comfortable. Somehow we don't belong in those other, more expansive rooms. They are for others. They are for richer people and more privileged people and people with more talent than us. We stay within the familiar, our comfort zones, and don't venture beyond the walls or limits of the rooms we have chosen. Why? Because our cans and can'ts are written on those walls, and we obey those diktats as though they were real. Our incomes reflect those limits, so does our self-image. In fact, there is scarcely any part of our makeup that is not affected by what's written on those walls. The words on our walls are metaphors for our self-talk, of course. They represent the attitudes, opinions, and beliefs we've accumulated over the years. Many of them are hand-me-downs from our parents, grandparents, teachers, coaches, religion, peers, books, TV, and an endless list of other authorities in our lives. Upon inspection, many of them are laughable. Nonetheless, they still seem to have a hold on our progress. We all have different words on our walls. That's why we appear to have different limits. Your limits are different from mine because the truths written on your walls are different from the truths written on mine. However, they're not really truths at all. They are just the guidelines we have adopted for getting through life. And many of them are fictions. They are hand-me-down beliefs that were written on our walls by others, and we have been dutifully obeying them ever since. This need not be. We constantly consult the writing on our walls. The writing is our innermost prominent advisor, and we consult it all day long. And why not? It represents every experience we have ever had. It contains all of our how-tos. It contains our cans and can'ts, as well as our shoulds and should nots. It contains our musts and must nots, as well as our sense of fair play. It contains our version of proper behavior, as well as what is right or wrong in this world. It contains our judgments, our successes, and our failures. It's all there. Everything we hold to be true, written on our walls. We constantly consult the writing on our walls for what to do. Those words represent the truth as we have learnt it. The writing on our walls is not carved permanently in stone. I am happy to announce that all the writing is in chalk. It is erasable. And when you're ready, you can come back and join us in wherever you're sat and in this Zoom room with myself and Steve. The Palace of Possibilities by Gary Craig.
The Palace of Possibilities. Well, we chose that story because we had a chat yesterday, as we usually do before we meet up with you guys. And what we ended up talking about was choices and kind of what helps us or holds us back from making choices. And it was spurred by a couple of things that happened this week. One was a radio program that I heard back on Monday, and one was came out of the conversation that Jaffer and I were having about career choices. So the thing on Monday was it was on something called the TED Radio Hour that broadcasts on it's a digital channel, Radio 4 Extra. It's a BBC channel. So it's available on Sounds. It's really good this week. It's got it was talking all about decisions and how we make them. It was talking about that one of the things that were one of the people that appeared on this was a professor called Sheena Iyengar, and she's a professor at Columbia Business School in the USA. Her job is studying choices and how we make choices, and so she's been kind of devoting an academic career to the whole process that we go through when we make choices. And there's something about our culture at the moment that somehow the idea of having lots of choice about everything is seen as being a good thing, and partly I go along with that. But she was kind of looking at kind of like the downside of that, and one of the things that she's been studying is something that she calls choice overload. And she talked about an experiment that she did as a graduate student at a local deli. And this deli sounded an amazing place, like a real Aladdin's cave of lovely things to eat. And she discovered that she spent a lot of time in there and very, very little money. And she wondered why it was. So she went down to the shop, and with the agreement of the shopkeepers, she said, look, I've counted, you've got 348 different types of jam. Imagine that. That sounds like heaven to me. I could just stop there and go for the rest of the day. You've got 348 brands of jam. I want to do a little psychological experiment. So what she did was she set up a booth outside. And on the first week, she just took 24 of the 348 jars of jam, and she invited people as they were going into the shop to sample some, and it was great. Of the people that went into the shop, 60% stopped and sampled some jam. The next week, she took just 6 jars of jam and did the same thing. And this time, only 40% of people stopped to sample the jam, which is fair enough. But then the second question that she asked was, well, how many of these people that actually sampled the jam went on to buy jam? When there were 24 samples on offer, 3% of people bought jam in the shop. When there were only 6, she found that 40% of those people went on to buy jam. And it's the idea that sometimes when we have too much choice, then we just get overloaded with it and we end up not making any choices at all. So when I go on Amazon because my pen's running out and I kind of enter that I want to buy a pen, I don't get, a pen, I get pages and pages of pens in all kinds of different colours. And sometimes it's just, it takes so much time to make a choice that I don't make a choice at all. So anyway, that was kind of the start of my thinking. But anyway, Jaff, you've got sorry, I should say, out of that as well came the idea of the question, well, how can NLP help us when we are faced with, sometimes it feels like almost infinite choices, because we don't have time or energy to sample everything in order to make a proper choice. What do you think, Jaff?
Yeah, and I think where the conversation then led to yesterday, and you told me about this academic doing her wonderful stuff, and it just blew my mind. And I thought, well, yeah, it goes back to that adage of less is more, and we hear it, and people brand it about and all that kind of stuff. And where it came from was I was asking Steve for his advice. For anyone who knows me, they'll know that I've had quite an interesting career, and I feel really blessed to have had the career that I've had. Working across the public, private, and voluntary sector, working locally all the way up to working nationally. But I am one who gets quite itchy feet. Not literally, by the way. My feet are quite moisturized and whatnot, figuratively or metaphorically. And it's just
your feet now, Jeff.
And it's just one of those that so I was having a conversation with Steve, and at the minute I feel like I'm faced with all sorts of wonderful possibilities, and I'm really fortunate to have a really good employer who provides a tremendous amount of support, allows me, because of the role that I do, I work 3 days a week, it allows me to fulfill some of my passions for the other 2 days a week. So doing this kind of stuff, which had I worked full time, it might not be possible. And yet I still have all of these other possibilities that I feel are untapped. And so there was a particular role that's come up recently that I've been really interested in for many, many years. And then for some of the listeners, they might be aware that I'm next year off to do my NLP Train the Trainers, which will mean next year I'll be like yourself, Steve, and like our trainer Chris, in that I'll be a certified NLP trainer, which will be fab. So I was sat there with this conundrum going, Steve, I have no idea what to do. I don't know. Tell me. advise me, guide me, my guru, tell me what to do. And Steve sat there and told me about this academic, and it just made me think that, yeah, you know, we're often, you know, as human, I think we're a fascinating mammal. Human beings are, you know, we've got incredible mechanisms within inside of us that I think we just take for granted often. And that ability to be able to sample all these choices and yet still do nothing is incredible, or do very little is incredible, which I'm partly guilty of. So you know, I'll see these wonderful roles, and then Steve asked me, he said, so what is it that you actually do then? So you've seen these wonderful things. What is it that you do? And I went, nothing. Oh. And then I said, I then kicked myself for a couple of weeks after for not doing anything. And so we started having this conversation about choice and about what that means, and how we can, you know, it goes for me, Steve, reflecting on it yesterday afternoon. It went back to that Stephen Covey thing, which I know isn't necessarily NLP, but it's a wonderful tool, the whole circle of control, circle of influence. Yeah. Things that are outside of your control. And I remember last week with the very quick, very fast moving, very kind of week announcing lockdown of areas on Thursday evening, the day before Eid. And kind of, you know, speaking to a lot of people since then and going, well, it's out of our control. It's susceptible to our influence. So I was speaking to the wonderful Alan Johnson, who many of us will know, another fantastic NLP trainer. And I was speaking to him, and I said, it's susceptible to our influence to some extent. And he said, yeah. And the thing with that is, it's susceptible to our influence in 4 years' time when we head to the ballots. At this minute in time, I don't know whether it's even influenceable, if that's a word. So for me, you know, the stuff like that, I think we pay, or we can start to pay so much attention to, and start to get ourselves worked up, and, you know, why is it happening, and what kind of nonsense is this? And I remember learning the circles of control and circles of influence the first time on my foundation diploma, but it only really made sense, Steve, when you came in to do some stuff with the charity that I used to run. But I thought, this makes wonderful sense. This makes so much, you know, it just, the penny just dropped for me that, yeah, you know, as again, as humans, we're focusing on stuff that's very limited in terms of influence, perhaps, and or stuff that is beyond our control, unfortunately. And for me, it's how do we move ourselves away from that?
So thinking about, sorry, I was going to say to you, well, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
But before I do that, please, if you're listening and you've got some ideas about this, and specifically how you might and how we might use NLP to make choices, please feel free to bombard Jaff with lots of ideas, because that's what he's there for.
Thank you for that, Steve.
Well, one of the reasons.
So just very quickly, when you said that, I'm just going to read this comment from Max, bless it. I think this was about logical levels, so it did come in quite a few moments ago, about 10 minutes ago. She said, love that I'm paddleboarding. So I'm guessing she's not paddleboarding right now. I'm guessing that's on the weekend that she's going to be paddleboarding.
Who knows?
She could be paddleboarding right now. And she said, I'm excited and nervous at the same time. So hopefully, Max, if you walk through the logical levels, even if you did it, it's just so that I've got this right, Steve, you can do logical levels in your own mind as well.
Yeah,
so, you know,
absolutely.
you don't need to walk it through. So someone could be sat at the desk doing logical levels.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got that, if you've done logical levels and that's what's got you excited and nervous, fabulous. Because I think it's always good to have a little bit of nerves running for something like paddleboarding. It gets the adrenaline going.
Yeah. So yeah, on the logical levels, just very quickly, Robert Dilts, who I think I'm right in saying invented it or discovered it or whatever, he was very much into kinesthetic, the idea of that we move into different states. So for me, I don't have a particularly strong kinesthetic preference. So for me, you know, I can do it sitting down. But to get maximum effect, if you do have a kinesthetic preference, I think it's really useful to stand up and actually take steps. And it's a nice metaphor for a journey as well. So anyway, yeah, I had a question for you.
Yeah.
I can't for the life of me remember what it was. So yeah, we were talking about Stephen Covey and the circles and of control and influence and non-influence.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't mind including Stephen Covey or anything else as part of NLP. I think it was Richard Bandler that said, when he was asked what's NLP, he said whatever works.
I love it. I love it.
It's in one way quite cynical, but actually I like that. So I kind of adopted Stephen Covey's ideas as part of the model I work with NLP.
Well, sorry, just on that, Steve. Just remember your question as well, because you might lose it again. But I think he's got a point there. He's got an absolute point there, because we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about NLP being modelling, the difference that makes a difference, taking the best of what works. You know, so I had a conversation with I've joined a new networking group of like-minded kind of mental health kind of therapists and NLPs and coaches and whatnot. And I was having a conversation with someone who didn't necessarily know NLP, and so I told him your definition first of all, because I think it's wonderful, that definition. And then I followed up with, you know, for me it's all about modelling. And for me, what NLP has given me is a framework, and I say this time and time again, it's a framework and a set of labels to go, that's what it is. That's what makes me different to Steve, and that's what makes me similar to Steve, and that makes sense now, rather than scratching my head and going, I can tell we're different, and I can see that. For example, we do time different, and we'll talk about time at some other subsequent week. I can tell that we do time different, but why? And NLP's given me that framework now. So for me, I absolutely love what Bandler said there about, you know, whatever works. And like I said, some people might see it as very cynical. I think it's absolutely real. You know, it's absolutely real.
Yeah. So anyway, choices. So you were saying that when it comes to sort of choosing a career path, that sometimes you get so much information that you can't make a decision, which is what Professor Iyengar was saying on the radio this week.
Yeah.
So here's a thought then. Well, that being the case, and you just thinking about that model that you just introduced, that idea of circles of control and influence, can you use that as a way of helping you make choices?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So give me an example.
So if I just tell you what's happening in my life at the minute, and this is what I tend to do. So I've got, like I said, I've got this stuff about the career stuff and where do I go and what do I do and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I've got some stuff about, you know what, I really want to settle down at some point, and it'd be better if I could do it earlier rather than later. Yeah. Bless my mum's. My mum's been told that she's got a bit of a liver problem, so that's playing on my mind a little bit. Nothing too serious, and as long as she does what she's been told by the doctors, we should be. But that's, you know, that plays on my mind. And of course, this whole lockdown situation is driving me slightly bonkers at time, because I tend to spend all of my time in this room here, with just the worry of, well, what happens if I go out, and how will I feel? And so I've got these 4 or 5 sets. My car, oh my gosh, Steve, me and my car, we are not friends. Me and cars have never been friends. But my car's a big thing. So what I tend to do is, and again, if anyone has the same situation with cars, please get in touch, because let's have a conversation about that. But what I then tend to do once I knew this model was going, right, okay, so let me now just, that seems like a hell of a lot of stuff, Steve. And that's just probably on the surface. You know, if I dug a little bit deeper, I'm sure there's other stuff. But if I just take those 4 or 5 to begin with, now what I'm able to do knowing this tool is to start to separate things out. So what's in my control? Well, the stuff about my career is absolutely in my control. I can decide which way I want to go. I've signed up to the trainers. that is, I've committed to that. So that's absolutely happening. That's in my control. I can decide whether I apply to any of these jobs or not. I can decide whether I go back to my current employer or not and say I'd like some more responsibility or whatever it is. Yeah, that is absolutely within my control. I can do something about that. I might not necessarily get the result that I want, but I can do something about that. The stuff about my car, well,
Okay.
I can ring up a few garages and I can ask for a few quotes and I can see actually what's going to happen there, and then I can decide the best one for both the situation and the price and go, right, let's hand that in. The stuff with my mom,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to that's something that I'm probably gonna have to influence because I'm not in control of my mom. You know, she's in control of herself. So I'm gonna have to nudge her along every so often. And if she says I don't want to go for a walk, well then I'll have to, you know, use influence in whatever way that I can. And that might be, right, I'll come for a walk with you. Or we'll kind of have something healthy together. I can't believe I'm saying that, Steve. Don't tell her I said this. Bless her. And then there's some stuff, COVID, that is completely out of my control.
Okay, but what I'm thinking about specifically is, let's just use that example of the way that you get loads of information about possible career moves. Can you use the idea of the circles of control and influence? Can you use that to make choices?
Choices about my career, you mean?
Yeah, specifically.
I'd say yeah. I'd still say yes.
Good.
A large part of it I might feel is not in my control because, you know, I could put in a very decent application for a job somewhere else, and because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in, just be completely, you know, so I can do that in terms of influencing. I can influence the decision that's made, but so a large part of it, unless we're talking about my particular role at the minute, a large part of it I feel is perhaps outside of my control, either in that it's in the influence sphere or it's completely out of my control.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, we're getting some interesting thoughts and comments here. So I'm just going to read them out. So Max said, yes, I did it, and my feet weren't stable. So I know I need to get on my balance boards. Lol. Well, there you are, Max. The
Good
wonders
luck
of
with that,
logical
Max.
level. And I was just going to say, anyone who tries a balance board is, I give them much more respect because I think, wow, you know, to have that.
I have
Someone
no idea.
said to me about balance the other day, which I thought was a wonderful thing. They said, and I don't know about you, Steve, but I always associate balance with PE. And I was really, really, really bad at PE. Shockingly bad. It was my worst subject, along with art in the sense of drawing and stuff, because I was an awful drawer and an awful painter, and I'd often glue my hands together. And I'd always associated, for me, balance with PE. So when someone said balance, automatically I would think, even if it was to do with, have you got the right level of balance in terms of mental health, in terms of physical health, all that kind of stuff, I'd always see it as PE. And someone reframed it for me the other day. They gave me a different twist on it, and they call it a harmony slider.
Ooh.
Which I really like. I really like the concept of a harmony slider. On the one hand, I'm absolutely in harmony with myself and others, all the way through to, at times, we do feel like we're completely unharmonious, if that's the word, with people and ourselves. But I love that. It felt so much better for me than balance. So the reason I say that, Max, is because it might be that you want to get on your harmony slider board rather than your balance board.
Either way, it'll be a kinesthetic experience and you end up getting wet.
That's it. That's it. So Tony then wrote, with clients who wonder about this or that choice, I always drop in the third element, which is do nothing. And that brings me back to a presupposition, which I'm sure you could think of, Steve, already, which I'll mention in a minute. And then he's written, so choice is do this, do that,
That,
do nothing.
do not. Yeah.
I really like.
And that's exactly what the research was saying, that research that we talked about earlier. Most people, when they're faced with too much choices, do now. Bad for business. Later on in that interview, she talked about some work that was done with Procter and Gamble about I think it's Procter and Gamble, the Head and Shoulders shampoo. Supposed to be the most popular shampoo in the world. At one point, they had 24 different varieties.
Oh.
24 different varieties of Head and Shoulders for every different type of hair and skin condition and whatever. And they were given the advice, cut down to 15. And apparently, by doing that, it earned them something like $600 million in a year just by cutting down the choice that they offer to people. Because faced with 24, people often, as Tony was saying, 24 is too many. I can't sample all those. I don't know what sort of hair I've got. I'm not an expert on skin. I'll just go next door to the convenience store on the way home and I'll get what's on the shelf. And it makes sense. See, for me, right, it comes back to that whole idea of present state and desired state. Now, I was working over the weekend with a practitioner group. They were finishing off. It was their last weekend together. And so it was an integration exercise. So everybody had a chance to strut their stuff, working in trios with an observer and an explorer. And they put a lot of time and effort into this. And they're a fantastic, it's only a small bunch. There's only 5 people in the group. But what a fantastic group. And they were a bit nervous about, that performance thing. And half in jest, but actually I was quite serious as well when I thought about it. I said, look, you've done the work. There are very few things that you're going to fail on here beyond physical assault or whatever. I said, but one of them is if you start working with somebody without having any knowledge of a desired outcome. Because if you're going to do that, don't bother doing an NLP course. You could do that anyway. It's like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. So Alice meets the cat at a crossroads, and she's not sure which way to go to she can't make a decision. So she asks the cat, and the cat says, well, where do you want to be? And Alice says, I don't know.
I get that. I feel like Alice right now.
Let me finish.
Sorry,
the cat says, we'll take either road. It doesn't matter. If you don't know where you want to be, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. But that's the thing about making choices. If you don't know what you want at the end of the choice, do the third option that Tony suggests, which is get out.
Sorry. No, I was interrupting you there, Steve. And the reason I was because as soon as you mentioned that Alice thing, I got it. So that's how I feel right now. I feel like, and you've just said it, and it just clicked to me there and then. I genuinely, I feel like Alice right now, and I feel like I've got these 2 roads ahead of me, and there's probably a third and a fourth. There's these roads in front of me, and I'm like, where do I head down? And it feels, and I love that thing that you just said there about outcome setting, because for me, that is the foundation of NLP. So if you look at the 3 legs of NLP plus 1. I always love that plus 1. It kind of, and we'll talk about the 3 legs of NLP at some other point. But one of the legs of NLP, so one of the kind of foundations, if you will, is working towards outcomes. So I don't know if you're going to ask me what my outcome is or not, but I'm going to tell you anyway, Steve.
Okay, go on, tell me. Well, tell us all.
The outcome I want. So the outcome I want is to be able to help people, and to be able to help people in a really holistic, really meaningful way. Like really meaningful, like being able to impart my knowledge and my wisdom and my skills with people. That's what I want.
So let's think about that in terms of NLP. So what
Yeah.
you've just given is a really big chunk.
Yeah.
I want to help people. I want to make a difference, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that many people who do NLP or are listening this morning, that will kind of resonate with them. Okay, so I can help people in a number of different ways. Okay, so I can help people by picking up the litter on the dog walk that me and my partner go on every day. I can help people by doing the work that I do with NLP, or as a therapist, or as a youth worker, or in education, or by telling Procter and Gamble to, reduce the number of shampoos they've got on offer for Head and Shoulders. So that's a lovely big chunk stuff. But what happens when you chunk that down a little bit and think, well, how will I do that in a way that kind of gives full respect to my skills, my ability, my experience?
Is that a question you're asking me? How?
It could be. But so I guess, and young people do this a lot, and we're both youth workers, that when we ask them a question like, well, what do you want to do? You'll get big chunk answers, which are great, except that it's really hard to make concrete decisions based on, well, I find it is anyway. It's hard to make concrete decisions based on something big chunk and not sort of stuff that's not tangible.
I'm laughing because I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I think that's the reason why I'm in this predicament, for want of a better word, at the minute, is because it is quite big chunk, and so therefore we talked about yesterday about committing ourselves to action. And again, another the plus one leg of NLP. So 3 legs of NLP plus one, but the plus one is take action.
Yeah.
And so whilst I have an outcome in mind, the reason I can't necessarily take action is because it's so up here. And like you said, well, what does that look like? And
so how do you make that more concrete? So how have you helped people in the past, perhaps? How can you draw on the qualifications that you've got? And actually, that whole process of kind of chunking it down a little bit so it becomes a little less
quite specific.
It becomes more specific, more concrete, if you like. That's where it kind of overlaps a little bit with those circles of control and influence, because by knowing the stuff, it gives you more options as well on how to make a choice.
Yeah. And I think, and for me, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this, so we talked last week about applied NLP.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
NLP is quite abstract at times, and people come across it, and even people within the change work world kind of come across it and still see it as this kind of airy-fairy thing. And one of the things we wanted to do as part of these podcasts was to make it really applied. And so I've got a really good example that I think people often have this thing of either we're in a situation that we want something different, etc. And you just put it to life in that actually it's outcome based, so you need an outcome. And I could sit here telling you chapter and verse about my life story, and I'm sure that you'd probably listen. And at some point you'd go, well, what is it that you want? What is it that you want, Jaffer? Great, you told me all of that. Great, you told me what your skills are, and you told me what your knowledge is, and you told me your past, and etc. etc. What is it that you want? Yeah. What is your outcome? And then if someone, sorry, go on, Steve.
I was just thinking back to that practitioners group that finished off on Sunday, and one of the best pieces of NLP that I saw was it was 2 women working together, and the woman who was acting as the guide was trying to establish what the explorer wanted. And it was great because she was getting loads of detail, and she was just moving it to one side, acknowledging it, and very gently coming back to exactly that question. That's great. Now tell me what you want. Okay, I'm hearing that. Now tell me what you want. And at the end of all that detail, what is it that you'd like? So just a really nice, very gentle piece of refocusing. This is what we're here for.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
until we've got
yeah.
that,
That absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
And then someone
And if
might give you. Sorry, I was going to say, and then someone will give you perhaps, people like me might give you some very what we call large chunk information. So kind of
yeah,
again, very abstract, very kind of I wouldn't necessarily call it non-committal, but it is kind of so vague and so large that actually committing to it may be quite a task in itself.
yeah,
So it's then about bringing that down to very discrete, very specific actions that people can take to get towards that. And one of the things that I remember when we started doing this with our trainer, Chris, he often talked about never lose sight of that ultimate vision. So I said I want to help people using my skills and experience and knowledge, etc., in a very holistic way. Never lose sight of that, and
yeah,
at the same time, what are the steps that you're going to take to get to that?
yeah. Yeah,
What
no,
is that?
it's wise stuff, because that kind of points almost to that higher vocation stuff that
Mm,
you need to nail. And yeah, but sometimes it can just stop you making that. Well, which employment contract, for
yeah,
example, do I sign?
yeah, yeah.
So maybe from talking just now, maybe there's like a quality of chunk size. So we talked about that big chunk stuff that you just mentioned, and thinking back to what was going on in that practitioners group with those two women who were working together, was that the explorer in that was there was far too much detail. It was far too fine chunk. So maybe it's about finding a way of kind of reconciling that. Maybe there's an optimum chunk size. I don't know. An
Mm, mm.
optimum chunk size for making decisions. That's an
And the
interesting thought.
and the beauty of this is that we or the beauty of it is that we can do both.
Yes, of course,
We can.
of
So
course.
with this situation, I'm incredibly big chunk because I have no idea where I want to go. I know my vision, but I don't necessarily know how to execute that vision. And that's why you're saying you need to chunk into the detail.
Mm.
Anyone who knows me will know that I can go into incredibly fine chunk detail. For better or
Yes,
for worse, for better or for
yes.
worse, I can go into incredibly
But we
fine
all
chunk
can.
detail. Yeah,
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 and
yeah.
that's what
We
I'm
all
saying.
can.
We can all flex between the two, and go into fine chunk detail, or to go into large chunk detail as and when we need to. Um, and again, all of this
So,
is what you. Sorry, go on, Steve.
so what all I was going to say was that maybe if you like fine detail, fine chunk, and when you're making an important decision, like a career choice, and you go to very large abstract chunks, maybe that's because you want to stay where you are.
Mm.
So maybe it's a pathway to, let's call it Tony's third option, which is to do nothing.
Mm.
I don't know. Tony, what do you think if you're still there?
He is, because he's just give our live stream a love heart on Facebook. I don't know if you know what that means, Steve, or not.
I know
But he's
what a
just
love
given it
heart
a
is.
love. No, I know what what a love heart is. I'm saying on Facebook. It's a reaction anyway. So Tony's made a couple of other points. One was, and this is probably aimed more so at me, very, very, very direct, and it is, why would you settle down? Well, I've said it like that. I don't think he necessarily meant it like that. I've put on some tonality there. A very interesting question. Why would you settle down?
Beliefs.
So do you just want to say a little bit more?
Oh, that'll do. That'll do for me. No,
This is when we talk about
I,
large chunk and small chunk. This is what we mean right here. This is what we mean
oh
right
yeah,
here.
yeah. So if you're torn between two things, often there's, my experience shows me that often there is a belief in the middle of that, saying, on one hand this, on one hand the other.
Mm,
And if you remember when we did the logical levels just then, and we talked about that idea of beliefs and values, and those things act as either permission or prohibition for a certain action. So they'll let you do some stuff, they won't let you do others, and sometimes when you get those conflicting beliefs, you become paralyzed. You can't make choices or decisions. I think if we were sitting like one-to-one, I'd be saying, right, okay, Jaff, what's the belief behind that you need to get settled down? And you'd say, why do you believe you can ask me that question?
And they're slippery little buggers, aren't they? We had I think we had this I think we had this conversation last week about beliefs are slippery little buggers, aren't they? They yeah. So that's great. Tony also said about logical levels. So he said one of the things that he likes to do is to take people, if it's connected really well, kind of traveling up, he likes to take people traveling back down and ending that environment, bringing with it each one of those steps. And we know that's such a wonderful thing to do. So if you're doing a logical levels and they're really aligned, actually walking yourself back through them so that you end in the environment and bringing each one of those steps with you. And there's that magical world which is enrich and enhance and transform the space of. So bringing the connection with you, allow that to enrich and enhance the space and transform the space of identity, and taking that, enrich and enhance and transform the space of beliefs and values. Such a powerful thing to do. And I think it just reaffirms, absolutely without a doubt, your conviction in that thing that you're exploring at that time. Max has said she had a virus a few years ago that affected balance. So for me, nothing now stops me doing anything anymore. So for that's what's happened, Steve, on the logical levels. I fell in, but I laughed.
Yay!
At some point, she must have fell off a balance board, and she enjoyed it. And then there was another comment here from Max about maybe do some metaphors of movements if it is a problem. So again, for people who don't know metaphors of movement, it's a spin-off of NLP. We've mentioned our friend Alan Johnson, who does some great stuff on it. In actual fact, he did a session for me last night, Steve, and some other NLPers. And it was wonderful. You know, some people had just finished their foundation diploma, some people were master practitioners. All of us were just loving this whole concept of metaphors of movement. And Max is now trained in it, so that's great. And she's also said, do watch the film Alice in Wonderland. So now that two of you have said it, I'll have to spend the weekend Googling and watching that. And the final comment from Max is, if you know what you want, the universe will show you how. Stop trying so hard, giving it energy. If in doubt, do not. Ask your unconscious. So I like that, ask your unconscious. And we know that, you know, the unconscious mind is benevolent, and we've talked about this a couple of weeks ago, comparing this view of the unconscious with our friend Freud's view of the unconscious, which are polar opposites, you know, absolutely. And Tony also then said, my house is full of the sound of traveling Jaff.
Of what?
Traveling Jaff. I don't know. I don't know whether that means like he's taking me around the house with him. So, you know, sometimes people watch us on their phones and whatnot, or he might be doing a chore in a. If you could explain that, Tony, that'd be great. That'd be, or if you wanna give it a bash, Steve, if you get it. Okay. No? Yeah, go for it.
I'm only thinking of mobiles and mobility, and I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Fab. And the thing that I wanted to say is, well, two things really. So there's this NLP presupposition here: possible in the world and possible for me is only a matter of how, which you've already said. Again, it's that outcome setting. It's how am I going to get there, you know, and how can I make that happen? And the other one, which is actually there's quite a few of them up here, Steve. If what you're doing isn't working, do something different. Do anything different. So do something different, do anything different. And then the last one that I can think of that really sums this up really, really nicely from an NLP presupposition perspective is the person with the greatest flexibility of thought and behavior will have the greatest influence in any interaction.
Cool.
So the person with the greatest flexibility of thought and behavior will have the greatest influence in any interaction.
We'll live with that.
So it is coming on to 11:30, which means I think it's time for us to depart, Steve. Depart. Depart is such a fancy word, isn't it? Before we go, Tony said he missed a comma after traveling. So it should have said, my house is full of the sound of traveling, Jaff. So it's as though he's telling me a message.
Okay. So it's not traveling Jaff.
No, it's traveling. Fair enough.
Okay. So listen, I was going to say to folk, thank you very much for sticking with us this morning. And if you've got any questions or anything that you want us to chat about next week, we can do that. So please get in touch with us. So a good way of getting in touch with me is through my website, www.torchbeamtad, all one word, torchbeam, TAD.
And of course, people have got me on Facebook, or they can find me on Facebook, and we'll set up another event for next week, which will be
Lovely.
great. And I just want to reinforce what you just said, Steve. I think we really want to make this for the people, and it's great that we're getting that interaction. At the same time, please, if there is something that you think, oh, it'd be nice to get Jaff's and Steve's perspective on X, then please just tell us what X is, and we will look at it from an NLP perspective and give you our thoughts and our views. And of course, that's all they are, our thoughts and our views on that particular subject in relation to our experience in NLP. So please, if there is a particular thing that you'd like to hear us chat about, then just get in touch and we'll do what we can.
Lovely.
Until next week, take care of yourselves.
Yeah, have a lovely week, folks, and a great weekend as well. Yeah, you prepared well for it.
We did, Steve. Thank you so much for the logical levels as well. Take care, folks, and we'll hopefully see you back here next Friday at 10:30. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.